Starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
On where you are, and thank you for joining us for the Competitive Intelligence Division webinar series. I'm Zena Applebaum. I'm the chair of the CI division, and I thank you for joining us today. Thank you as well to our sponsor, Aurora WDC, for hosting all of our webinars, including this one today. Today's webinar will be on CI in a global patent litigation environment. And just before we get started, a couple of notes. I want to remind you that the conference is coming up, and both our webinar sponsors, Aurora WDC, as well as our speaker today, Darts IP, will be exhibiting and will be at the conference, and I encourage you to visit both of them. As well, to remind you to please sign up for our networking event, which is the Monday night. It's always a great time. We'll be having hors d'oeuvres and drinks at the Chart House just prior to the IT dance party, which is always a big hit. So come and have a little pre-party networking event with us, and we'd love to have you. Just before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about Guillaume. Guillaume van Rickversol is the owner of Darts IP. He's a member of the management team and the CEO of the U.S. operation product development of the platform. Darts IP is a global IP case law platform with 2 million decisions from more than 2,500 courts globally. The platform is used by tribunals, corporates, and law firms from around the world to track IP litigation. Prior to joining Darts IP, Guillaume worked as a consultant for McKinsey & Company. He holds a Master's in Science from Université Catholique de Louvain and an MBA from the Wharton Business School. So welcome, Guillaume, and without further ado, I will turn it over to you.
Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Zena, for the introduction, and Michael for hosting us today. We're very excited about the opportunity of being able to speak to you and on a very, very interesting topic. So we'll be covering 3 things today. The first is I'm going to be laying out the context of patent litigation. And as I'm sure most of you know, the tendency of patent litigation is a global one. Things are going global, cases are going global, the impact and the reach of those cases have impact around the world. Secondly, I'm going to show you what excuse me what Darts IP can do in helping you access information from around the world, and how you can use this in your own national cases, or your own cases, or in your own litigation strategy for corporates. And last, I'm going to show you again another few examples of the kind of impact that information from outside of the United States or from abroad can have on your business, or on your client's business. So let's start now with setting the stage of global patent litigation. So while the US is by far the world's economic leader, it's important to note that Europe and Asia are growing fast. This is a slide with the world map adjusted for GDP, and it shows that the US does represent clearly 22% of the world GDP, but China, Europe, India, and Japan are very strong contenders, and of the world's economy. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on the regions that are the most heard about and discussed in conferences, news, and so on, which are namely US, Europe, and China. Now, we looked at the economic trends. If now we look at the IP trends, they go in exactly the same direction. So while the United States has filed 600,000 patents in 2013, actually China has filed 800,000 patents. So, and in the whole of Asia, approximately 1.5 million patents were filed. So that gives you an idea of the level of investment that is happening in Asia and also in the rest of the world on IP, and the importance of being aware of what's happening in those countries. Now, filing is one thing. There is also patent granting. And so here you see that the US is still by far the biggest patent grantor, so to say, as a country. But if we look at the regions of the world, we also have Asia, which comes in very strong, with basically Japan representing 42% of the patent filers, the patent grants in Asia, China 31%, and South Korea 20%. So those in China, in Asia, these are three countries that are very important to keep an eye on. Now, this says that basically it's just a question of a few years before the patent pool in Asia or in China, Japan, and South Korea becomes very comparable and very important on the global patent landscape. Going forward, we also have the litigation and the legal activity that we have around the world. Now, obviously, the US are known for their litigation, their patent litigation, and is by far the biggest patent litigator, as you see here at the bottom, in the bottom graph, by far the biggest litigator in the world. However, when it comes to patent prosecution, you'll see that there's still a lot of activity in Europe, which is more or less stable. So the EPO issues approximately 12 to 14,000 decisions a year. But if you look at China in blue, it went from 2,000 to close to 8,000 decisions in 2013. So that's a threefold increase in just 7 years. And if now we look at the US, we see that it has been almost flat, between 4,000 to 6,000 decisions a year until the IPRs and the American Invents Act were introduced a few years ago. And so you see the trend picking up as of 2012. Now this is for the countries in general. Now let's try and narrow down our analysis and our search on specific industry. And here I have looked at the pharmaceutical industry, and I took the top 15 companies by sale. And so you have Pfizer, Novartis, La Roche, and so on. In red, you see all the decisions, the number of decisions that were taken on the merits involving one of these companies as either party. And what's interesting to note is, of course, the US represents a significant chunk of the activity for Pfizer, for Novartis, but it's also very important to note that there is a lot of activity outside of the United States. And so if you're trying, one as a law firm, to attract a client to go and pitch information or your services to a client, it's very useful to have a good understanding of the activities of that company from all around the world. And also, as a company, as Novartis or Pfizer or Sanofi, you want to be aware of what's happening to your competitors around the world. And so here I'm just showing the importance of knowing what's the importance of accessing information in Europe, in China, in Commonwealth, in Japan, or South Korea. Now, even if we looked more specifically at the United States, you would see that there are a number of patents that are obviously challenged and discussed just in the United States. You see this in dark red. But it's also interesting to see that in the lighter red, you have a number of patents that are litigated both in the United States and abroad. And that, again, can have a significant impact on the outcome of your case or on the way you approach your case. If you know that your competitor's patent is being invalidated in Europe, why not go and find the information on that case in Europe and maybe reuse some of those arguments, especially the ones relevant to prior art? So again, accessing non-US information, global information, information from Europe, US, India, China, Brazil, can really make a difference for your company in either a litigation or a prosecution environment. So, to sum up, we have seen that non-US areas and geographies are becoming increasingly important in patent litigation and patent filing and patent granting. This represents a wealth of information that you as a patent professional can then use either in strategic planning or litigation. Now, while we see that the US plays a very important role on the litigation scene, Europe is key in prosecution and China is coming on strong. So I can only encourage you to be aware of that fact and be curious of what's happening around the world. And most importantly, in litigious industries such as pharma or high tech, the litigation for major corporates is truly global. When you've seen the Apple versus Samsung wars, it was cases in Germany, in Japan, Korea, US, and they all had implications on each other. Now, keeping track of all this information can be overwhelming. So what we have done and what Darts IP has done has developed a database of, as Zina mentioned, more than 2 million patent and trademark decisions, 1 million of which is patent decisions, from more than 2,500 courts. And we have developed an interface that allows patent professionals to search for cases globally, proactively track any litigation or prosecution from you as a company, from your clients, from your adversaries, on a specific industry, even a specific patent portfolio that you've defined yourself. And finally, we have allowed our users to gather statistics for strategizing patent litigation around the world. And what I'm going to do now is provide you with a few examples of how to use Darts IP or how Darts IP can help you fill in those gaps and those needs. First, the first question that you might want to ask is, what about that company? Whether it's my client, my prospect, my adversary, or my own company. What is its litigation environment? And so the way to do it with Darts IP is extremely simple. You just do a search by party, and here I'm going to enter, for example, Procter & Gamble. So Darts IP has also done corporate groups, so this would include Procter & Gamble and all of its subsidiaries. If I do a search for Procter & Gamble, I see that I have more than 10,000 as well as complaints, India to Brazil, with the latest decision from India dating from May 13th. Darts IP also provides access to the original decisions in Brazilian, or Portuguese I should say, and also a legal summary of what the case is about. In some cases, it's a very succinct case. In others, it's a more detailed discussion. But what's also interesting is to see for Procter & Gamble what kind of information would be available just if you were just relying on US sources. Well, you see here we have 707 documents. Darts IP does contain all the complaints and all the decisions from the PTAB, the federal circuit, and all the district court decisions. So we actually have a very comprehensive database of the United States. So it's not that information is missing for the US. It actually means that there is a lot of activity going on outside of the United States. Again, you could do the same exercise for Pfizer, and you'd see that the US represents approximately 16% of the documents that exist globally on litigation and prosecution decisions or office decisions for Pfizer. Now, once you have defined the scope of the company, you might want to narrow down your search to a specific patent. And this can be used when you're doing a prior art search or when you're doing any kind of prosecution. You want to make sure that, or litigation, you want to make sure that that patent hasn't been challenged somewhere else in the world. And if it has, access the decision, understand the arguments that were made, and basically take that into account when you build your argumentation for the for your US cases. And here it is as simple. I can click on a new search, and I click on search by patents, and I could enter a patent number 4720. You will notice that this is a US patent number. What Darts IP does is it allows users to enter a US patent number. We then use the eSpaceNet restricted family information to find the matching patents around the world and do a search on those patents. And so here you have access to all the information on these patents around the world. So you would see that we have an ongoing IPR here in the US, but interestingly, there's been a cancellation proceeding in China with, if I put my mouse over point of law, where basically inventive step, that's a legal argument assessing the validity of the patent, has been looked at and no inventive step was found. If now you are interested in finding or seeing the case, you just click on the link and you would have access to the original decision, the original Chinese decision, with the possibility to also translate the decision. Now, for some reason, yes. So you have here access to the original Chinese decision. As I've shown you here, you also have a legal summary, inventive step. And you have here in the bottom left the possibility to translate the decision using Google Translate. So again, here you're able to have so much information than you used to before, because if you're researching a patent, whether it's yours, your clients, or your adversaries, you actually can find any cases on that patent around the world just by doing a few clicks. Now, if you're working in the pharma industry, it might also be very useful to be able to research a specific drug. So the way that you could do that using darts is in our pharma filters here, you enter either an active ingredient or a trade name. In this case, I'm going to type Nexium, hit search, and I will find all the cases or all the decisions in which any patent related to Nexium has been challenged or discussed somewhere in the world. And so we have here 215 documents, including decisions from the US, a hearing in France. So there's an ongoing litigation in France between AstraZeneca and Ethypharm. Here, another cases or decisions, there are complaints from New Jersey. If you click on the link, you'll have access to the original PACER complaint. But also decisions here from Sweden, France, and if I go a little further down, also decisions from Canada. So again, if you want to keep track of on the ongoing litigation on a specific drug, whether it is in the US, in China, in Europe, Japan, Brazil, or India, you just enter the drug name and then click on the search and click on Save as an Alert. By doing that, every time that a new case comes up in the system and that it has a patent number that is related to the Nexium drug, you would receive an email. Now, obviously, this was more of a pharmaceutical example. Now we also have the possibility for you to do a search, do this kind of search using portfolios, patent portfolios that you have defined yourselves. So let's say that you've defined a portfolio that discusses any wireless technology or LED lighting or a specific type of drug or a specific type of machine. You would just need to, in our system, define your portfolio, which is just basically copy-pasting a list of up to 50,000 patents and saving it. Once you have done that, you can select an existing portfolio. So here I'm going to use my tech portfolio, which is basically a portfolio of more than 14,000 patents related to LED lighting, and then click on the search. By doing that, you have access to the 180 decisions where at least one of the 14,000 patents I've entered in my patent portfolio is being challenged. And so you can access and see decisions from Japan, Korea, China, Japan, PTAB, or India, all in one interface. This is a completely seamless integration of all the information on one platform. And again, if you put your mouse over points of law, you can see the legal issues that are being raised in that specific decision. And if you click on the link, you would have access to the original decision from here from India. So you see this is a decision from the controller of patents in India. Now, another question that you might be asked is, what about damages? You're now negotiating or discussing licensing with a company somewhere in Europe, for example, or in China. Well, Darts IP can help you address that by having a specific search that we call damages search, where you can enter, for example, the information or saying that you're interested in finding all the cases where an infringement damage higher than one current US dollar or current euro has been awarded in Europe. Or better still, around the world, but on a specific industry, for example, electrical engineering. And if you click on the search, you'll find the 665 cases from around the world that have discussed any damages on a specific technology, in this case, electrical engineering, with decisions from Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, Texas, but also China, Japan, and more. So now you finally have access to information from outside of the United States. If you put your mouse over points of law, again, you have the legal summary of the decision. And if you put it on decision outcome, at the bottom here on the left, you have the amount of damages that were awarded. Also, for the members of the audience among you who are interested in more of the legalistic aspect of case law searching, we have developed a tool where we have claim construction. So here you could just, it's basically a dictionary where you can enter the information on a specific term or a construction and finding all the case law on that term. We also have a points of law search, which is a key number-like system where we have more than 500 points of law that are used to analyze the decisions, and you can actually use any of these points of law and also define the outcome for which you want to find the cases. So you could find all the cases where computer implemented inventions were found patentable and the like. Now, we have been diving into the details of case law searching or finding cases. Darts IP also offers the possibility to identify more global trends. And to do that, we have developed what we call the statistics module, and more specifically, the statistics module on the patent side. And I'm going to give you a few examples of the kind of information you can extract from the system. So, for example, you might wonder what the procedure duration is, or how much a case lasts, how long, a case lasts in Europe, and compare different European countries with each other. You could say I have a first instance decision on the merits where I have just infringement actions. And if you do that search, you'll be able to compare forum by forum the different locations and strategize on where you want to go when, or if you have the choice of venue, where you should go. Another example is the damages. We talked about damages a little earlier on, and you could say that you're interested in seeing the average damages in China for first instance decisions organized by industry or by types of patents. And so you see here I have a summarizing table that illustrates the amount of damages that were awarded in each industry, with the possibility here of having the minimum, the max, and the average. Now, if I look at another example which you can again find useful is, for example, finding the win rate of a specific company in a region. So let's say that you're interested in finding the win rate of Novartis in an infringement case. So you would look at substantive decisions and you would have Novartis as a plaintiff in an infringement case. And you could refine yourself or limit yourself just to Europe. And you see here whether basically what their win rate is, and you see that in Germany or they've been much more lucky than they have in the UK or in France. And last but not least is also if you're trying to defend a patent or litigate a specific, challenge the validity of a specific patent, you might be interested in seeing any trends in asserting the validity of the patent. And so to do that, you just do a plot by year and see the evolution over, let's say, the last 4 years, 5 years in Europe of patent validity, where the validity has been discussed really on the merits. This takes a little time because we include the EPO, which has more than 30 EPO was very harsh on the patent owners, and since then they have been a little more patent owner friendly, with basically a validation rate of approximately 50%. Now, here we have discussed how darts IP in the last section, how Darts IP could help you address the challenges that you had in a global litigation or global patent litigation environment. Now let's see another few examples on how Darts IP can actually impact your company. So first of all, did you know that one non-US patent is cited as prior art in more than 50% of US patent applications? So that tells you also something about how important it is just to be aware of what's happening outside of the United States. And in that, if that's the case, you might also be interested in knowing whether that patent has been challenged somewhere in the world. Has it been validated or invalidated? Is it a strong patent? What are the risks associated to that patent? Also, and that's also a chart used or extracted using Darts IP. Previous non-US validity challenges can help you build your case for the United States. So, for example, this opposition decision from 1993, or a decision here in Barcelona, or a case here in the UK, could that have an impact in the US? Well, probably yes, even though non-US decisions are non-precedential in the United States. Accessing non-US information can help you build your case in the United States because some arguments would already been done on the validity challenges for that specific patent. And vice versa. A patent that has been validated in the United States might have then been invalidated in Germany or in France. So it is very important, again, if you want to counsel clients or have a good view on your patent portfolio, to be aware of what's happening around the world. Then also, when you strategize and you're looking at an industry, it might be interesting to see any kind of cluster, do specific companies challenge each other, and how do they do that? This is an example of the non-US patent invalidation actions since 2000. And you see that basically, from GSK to Teva, Baxter, Mylan, Servier, Merck, La Roche, and so on, all these companies are extremely intertwined in terms of patent litigation and are also in litigations with a lot of other companies around the world. So understanding the universe in which, or the industry in which you're evolving can help you strategize better. And then, finally, and that's probably one of the most important graphs, when you are facing an opponent, is the opponent likely to be aggressive and sue you? Or is it more of a defendant? What we have found, what's interesting, is that if we take the most active companies in our system, either as a defendant or as a plaintiff, you'll see that the big companies actually are defendants in 80% of the cases and plaintiffs only in 20% of the cases, which somehow makes sense you have a lot of small guys going after the big guys. Now, there are two exceptions, or three, I should say. Acacia Research Group, which I'm sure most of you are very aware of, Philips, and Bayer. And just having this information can be crucial in your approach to discussing or dealing with a specific patent litigation. So with that, with these graphs, I hope to have shown you that non-US information can and is useful. And it's also very important to know that with DARTS IP, you could have access to all the information on a specific patent litigation around the world, whether in the US or outside of the United States. Now, thank you again very much for your time. If you have any questions, I think now it's time to address them through Zina. Otherwise, feel free to send me an email or call our support team. We'll be more than happy to answer or address any questions that you may have.
Guillaume, thanks so much for that. I think from a competitive intelligence perspective, a lot of what you talked about today, what DARTS IP is capable of doing, but even just in terms of opening our eyes to what is out there in patent litigation and in patent, filings and things like that. Particularly, I found the damages portion interesting. And I'd love to sit down with the data and sort of trend across industries and across different types of infringements to see what damages are paid out and how they're paid out. I think that, if this was something that you were working on or your firm was working on or your clients were working on, it would be interesting to watch from a trending perspective how the damages change over time or how they change with the various infringements. So great data, and thanks for sharing that with us. If anyone on the line does have questions, feel free to use the chat box in the webinar, in the GoToWebinar, and we'll answer those questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up a little bit early and give people back a few minutes of their day. But I just had one quick question for you in terms of the usage of the system. Do you find that it's many attorneys that are using it, or who do you find is the audience for this kind of data specifically? So
we have three types of audiences. Obviously, the courts and tribunals use DARTS. So the EPO, the Hong Kong IP division, the Chilean Patent Office. So and we're in talks here with Patent Office here in the US. So that there are a lot of patent offices around the world who actually rely on DARTS IP to do some of the background legal researching. That's one element. The second is we have a lot of corporates who use DARTS. So, companies like Qualcomm or Google use DARTS to track their litigation around the world. We have also a lot of pharma companies, just to name a few, Pfizer, Novartis, Sun Pharmaceuticals, and more use DARTS. And then, obviously, we have also a lot of patent lawyers who use DARTS for different things, really. In some cases, it's just finding the background litigation or the background information on a specific patent or doing the due diligence on a specific patent portfolio. And in other cases, it's actually even doing the case law research on for the United States, because what we have been told by our clients is that our search engine is so tailored to patent attorneys and to patent lawyers that they win a lot of time just in terms of researching.
Right. That makes sense. I find it interesting that corporate users would, in fact, use it to track their own litigation. That's very interesting. It's, you know, probably somewhere that many patent attorneys could help provide extra value to their clients by keeping them abreast of their litigation elsewhere in the world. So it's another use. Very interesting. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions coming in. The session will be recorded and on the CID website, available to anyone who couldn't join us today, or anyone who wants to just, you know, revisit the dearth of data that was provided to us. So thank you for that, Guillaume. In terms of the Competitive Intelligence Division and our webinar series, please join us on June the 2nd when Katie Kyler, our CID conference planner, will be presenting a preview of what you can expect in Boston starting on the 12th of June or the 13th, I guess, with the continuing education sessions. Otherwise, thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you again on June the 2nd. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Zina. Thank you, Michael, for organizing.
Yes, and thank you again to Aurora WDC for hosting. Thanks, everyone.